Cable's a mess, cable's organized. Today on Power Addicts. So what we're working with today is a battery cable system of a Yukon XL. I was at the junkyard looking for some other various parts and stuff. Whenever I'm in there, the Expeditions and the Yukons, I'll pop the hood and see, hey, do they have that big old fuse block? And looky here, I actually found one this time with the cover. So the way they set up, here is where your battery attaches, and it comes up through here, attaches to the fusible link up here. It's not a fusible link, it's actually a Maga-amp fuse. Then also coming off the battery here, you've got your starter cable. This goes down, obviously, to your starter. Then these two right here, this one right here comes over and plugs into a big monster fuse block on the passenger side, no, I'm sorry, on the driver's side of the Yukon. And this cable right here, if I remember right, came off of the alternator side. So in the event your alternator goes into overcharge, as in the voltage regulator goes haywire and starts slinging too much power, it'll pop the fuse before it smokes your battery. Now I'm sure somebody's going to ask what your Yukon XL is. I didn't even look, to be honest with you. I just popped the hood on a Yukon XL and said, oh looky, there it is, and I got it. Pretty simple. Now to pull these covers off, just simply grab hold of this end right here and give it a good hard tug and they'll come off, which I've already had that one off, obviously. Then you'll find the Maga-amp fuse. This one has 175 amps in it. Mostly because that Yukon XL probably had a 160 amp alternator. What you normally want to do is take your fuse, do it one step above whatever size alternator you got in it. Well, you got this little cover right here. You grab hold of this end, you give it a good tug, and it'll pull that off, and you'll see that we have a 175 amp mega fuse under there. Now the way that works is if you've got a 160 amp alternator, you bump up to 175 amp fuse. You always want your fuse just one step above whatever your alternator puts out. For instance, my Jeep here, that alternator right there, 130 amp alternator. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's a 150 amp fuse, mega fuse on that. So you guys catching on to what I'm doing here? I don't like the way that fuse is mounted directly to that battery, and I finally found one of these to clean that mess up. So we're going to install that Maga-amp fuser in my YJ to make my wiring look a little bit better. So the first thing you want to do, 13mm, removes those nuts so we can get these cables out of the way. We can figure out where we're going to mount this thing. And once you get your cables out of the way, then you see you can grab hold of your mega fuse and it'll lift out of there at that point. So just keep from dropping it down to the deep abyss. I'm going to go ahead and take it out, figure out where I'm going to mount this. So my thought process at the moment is putting it right here, right above the battery. That will still give you room to take the battery in and out. I'll just have to move my toolbox right there. That's got a bunch of tools and even a spare drive shaft inside that tube. I release a tie down strap, moves that tube out of the way, and it gives me enough room to bring the battery out. I've already got my negative cable disconnected so I don't cause any kind of sparks or anything. I'm going to go ahead and start taking my accessory wires off this post and just kind of eyeballing it, see if it's going to fit okay right there. See what kind of modifications I got to do to my cabling, if any of them. By doing a pre-fit, you'll kind of see whether you got to move any of your cables at all, or you may not have to move any at all. And that's why not moving any is actually what I'm hoping for. And hence me, before I cut any cables, I'm going to try it right there, see what it does. Now that I've got my cabling off the battery post, you can see right here, that's a 150 amp mega fuse. Like I said, 130 amp alternator. You go one step above your alternator. I done lost it and dropped it. And which puts me at 150 amp. So luckily I'll be able to reuse this in my new fuse holder. And I've had it like this right here for a while, didn't like it until I finally ran across that contraption we're putting in to make it look much better. Much more functional as well whenever you want to add more cables to your circuits. And just so to let everybody know what I had hooked up to the battery post, of course, as I said, that's my charge wire. That's going to the alternator right there. Put that aside, and fat cable goes to the starter. The smaller cable feeds my fuse block. And this big honking rascal right here goes to the winch on the front bumper. Your winch cable, always hook it directly to the battery, or some people use a breaker system in between the cable and the battery. completely up to you. But mine, I run it straight to the battery, because down here, if I can find it, if I can even see it, way down deep into the abyss down there is a constant duty solenoid that activates my winch. So that goes under there, and oh, I see a peak. I can barely peek and see it. Zoom in. Right there is where that cable goes. Goes on one end, and the other end goes to the winch. That's a constant duty solenoid. I got a switch inside my Jeep. So I got this switch right here inside my Jeep. I push that, it closes that solenoid, activates my winch. So here's where I'm at the moment. The block is going to fit just perfect right here. This right here is the wire that goes to my alternator. It came up in behind the brace right here, behind the battery. This is the wire that goes to my starter, and this right here goes to the fuse block. So that's up in there good. This is my accessory block right here that goes to the fuse block on the inside of the Jeep that I added. I'll link up the videos down below so you guys can check this stuff out. This is going to work out pretty good. Only thing I need to do is make me a cable from here to the hot battery post. Then drill me some holes to mount this rascal. And since we got some of this Yukon cable left over, I cut a piece off right there that I'm going to make my battery cable with. So I'll take this lug right here. It'll go on this side right here and down under the battery. Then I'll determine where I need to cut that at to join it to my battery post. So here's my 150 amp mega fuse, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in place because it's getting very redundant taking those cables on and off, knowing where I want. But you can look right there, see that green looking stuff? That's called corrosion. Take your knife blade, a wire brush or something, get these things good and clean. You can see right there how bright and shiny that is. I've already started on that side. Now I need to clean the other side and the other end just to be sure. So I've got my battery cable put in place right there, and the mega fuse is in place and got the edges cleaned up. And my charge wire goes to this side, as I mentioned a moment ago. But I also took the nuts that I pulled off there and cleaned them up real good. You can use a flat file and get on this side right here and just drag it across it and clean up that edge, because that's the contact edge that you'll get here and here. The cleaner your parts are, the better your contact is. Now you could use a flat file, which I have plenty of, but I'm standing right beside my trailer. Let me show you what I've done. Being that my trailer probably needs a good brushing and a paint job and stuff, that edge is rough. So I just took that and went like this right here. And cleans it right up and flattens it out, and I drop it. Ah, it's behind the tire. Do I get it? Do I get it? Do I get it? Ah, there it is. I just love it when that happens. Honestly, that's the second time I've dropped it, and the first time it was down in the body of the Jeep, and I finally found it. So I put my battery cable on there, and my charge cable's on this side, and that's the only thing that goes on this side. The only purpose for that 150 amp mega fuse is to protect the circuit from the alternator. In the event the voltage regulator inside the alternator goes bad and all of a sudden it throws its whole 130 amps into the system, that fuse will protect the circuit, keep from frying everything else. Now to mount this thing, I use number 8 by 1/2 inch sheet metal screws. You can see right there where I pre-drilled my holes. Now you can use self-tapping screws if you want, completely up to you. And 5/64 is the drill bit I use to pre-drill the holes for the number 8 sheet metal screws. Okay, aside from the battery cable, I'm pretty well done. Battery cable as in I am out of lugs. I gotta go to the store to buy another one to crimp on the end of that to put on that. When I built my winch cables and stuff, get off her. When I built my winch power cables, I used up my last set of lugs and I forgot about that. So that slides on there like that. And this one, I crimp a lug onto it, heat shrink it, and it goes on just like this right here. This battery cable, I've got long enough to circle up around here. Bolts on here. So here's that second nut that was up inside here. It's not gonna fly. simply because once I put my battery cable in, which is a really thick lug, and my accessory right here that goes to the fuse block inside the Jeep, then my starter wire, yeah, I was out of room. And also, you get those lugs in there, some of them step high, some of them step low, some of them are flat, blah, 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 blah. I was having a hard time getting them all to stack in. So I brought these two straight out the side, but originally this did not have that hole on the side. So I took my little wire cutters, it got a little 12 resilience and it cracked it, but it'd be alright. Cut me a little gap for those wires to feed out the side. And now I can get right here. Snaps on and we good to go. Yes. And now I need to go to the store, get me another lug, clamp that on, and it will be done. Of course, put my negative cable back on, and I've also got a negative here that goes to the firewall that needs to be fed behind the battery into there. Okay, got that all good and done, ready to install. But before I install this, set that over on the trailer, I'm gonna go ahead and run split loom along my cabling through here, because it is getting tucked in behind the battery. And right here, you've got that brace that holds the battery tray. I just want to be sure that the cabling, especially being hot cables and stuff, it's got some extra protection on it since it's so close to other metal objects, because hot cables and ground don't mix. There it is, all installed. We got the loom going right here and here. Of course, this already had it on there because this come off the Yukon cable. There's my charge cable coming from the alternator, coming in here, wrap the loom around it. So therefore, everything in behind the battery, protected. Of course, it all comes out right along in here. And it all comes out right there, so the loom actually comes on the outside of the battery to protect the wiring. Now, there are many people who believe in this split loom right here is just the end-all be-all stuff, and I'm not really a totally big fan of the stuff. Under the hood, totally cool. Inside the interior, I'm down with it. Use split loom inside the interior, totally down with that. Under the hood, not a big fan. Under the chassis, absolutely not. Simply because this stuff gets so brittle from heat. Let me show you. That stuff's falling apart. That's split loom. That's on these Yukon cables, and if I had to guess, that Yukon's somewhere around 2005 or newer. But I mean, see, this is under the hood. It is deteriorating, falling apart. I mean, yeah. Not a big fan of split loom. So what am I a fan of? This stuff right here, I like it. It's much tougher and it's better heat resistant. Great stuff. The only problem to it is it's kind of a pain to run your cabling through, especially if you got a long run or you've got in behind other stuff. You really need your wiring harness on the outside. Then once you run it through the jacket, then you tie it to your batteries or your fuse block or whatever it is you're running it to. That's really the only type of protectant jacket that I really carry anything for. Split loom, throughout the history of me working on cars, I've seen it many times of that split loom stuff falling apart and just turning into dust. Maybe it's one of those maintenance things. Whenever you see it coming apart, take it out, put new stuff in. Now I've got a couple extra engines laying around that I pulled out of various different Jeeps, and I'm going to build one of them eventually going into this, because this engine right here, it's seen better days. Number 6 cylinder pumps oil like crazy. It's real bad. No compression hardly. I mean, it runs okay, don't get me wrong, but it uses a lot of oil. Got a rear main leak. It's time to rebuild. It really is. So when that time comes and I do the rebuild, then some of this cabling, I'll get some of that jacket and re-sleeve it and clean it up then. It would just be a lot easier cleaning up the wiring with the engine out. So when that time comes, I'll take care of it then. So now we put the crown on it. Get right here, right there, snap, snap. Ah, look at that. Don't that look so much better? Yes. Put my ground on. She's ready to run. Oh, speaking of ground, guess what? I got the knocked out of it a minute ago. It's upper 80s out here and I'm sweating, okay? I was holding the hot cable, wiring all this stuff right here up. I was, of course, getting juice off the hot side. I laid my arm across the negative side, all that sweat across my body, and all of a sudden I went, ooh, I got tingles. But it wasn't too bad. I mean, it let me know that I had current flowing through my arm right there, but it didn't hurt. Again, this cable right here goes down to the battery. This cable right here feeds my fuse block. This little cable right here goes over to this fuse here, which goes inside the Jeep for my accessories block. And this one right here goes all the way over to the battery cable. Wrong trip, wasn't it? And this cable goes from here all the way down here behind under my air compressor to my alternator right there. And as I mentioned earlier, this fuse's only job is to protect the rest of the Jeep. So in the event the alternator decides to start throwing lightning bolts, that fuse has your circuit protected. And I hope this video helped you. If it did, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, leave us cool comments down below. Tell me what you do to organize your cabling. Peace. Later, y'all.